Hello and welcome to Edge Energetics. I am so excited to be here with you. I woke up at 2 o'clock this morning with joyous anticipation and a lot of downloads coming through for you as well. So I know that today is going to be potent and beautiful and powerful and really transformational. So welcome. As you're hopping in, pop in the comments and say hello. I'm hoping everything is going to flow nicely so that I can actually see your comments as they're coming through. But as you're hopping in live, let me know that you can hear me. Let me know everything is working okay. And I'm going to trust that I'm going to be able to see your comments as we go throughout. So welcome everyone to Edge Energetics. As you're hopping on, say hello in the comments, and let's start off by sharing one word that represents what brought you here to Edge Energetics. Hey Ella, welcome. Yes, one word that represents what brought you here. And then as people are kind of getting settled in, we will start to dive in. I'd also love to hear if you invited a business bestie, a team member, or a friend. That feels like a fun thing to check in on as well. Say hello to your friend that might be here. Hi Beth, welcome. Hey Vanessa, hey Chelsea, hey Krista, hey Anna. Okay, so I'm hearing, hey Gwinnell. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce your name right, but it is a beautiful looking name. So I'm hearing that curiosity brought you here, leadership, boundaries, inspiration, total curiosity. Yeah, great. I'm so happy. These are all really wonderful reasons to be here. I set the intention, like always, that you receive exactly what you need by being fully present here. And for this class in particular, I'm setting the intention that you do receive a spark of inspiration, that the context that we're providing here today really brings in a sense of like invigoration and new life into all of your relationships, but especially your relationships in your business with clients, with team members, with mentors or coaches that you might have. So I'm so happy that you are here. Welcome to Edge Energetics. This is class 1, masterclass number 1 of 2. The next one will be on Monday. And if this is the first time that you have ever been to one of my classes, let me know. I feel like I've had the same community for quite a long time. Some of you have been with me since I was the bedroom joyologist like 10 years ago. And I'm also noticing that in this series in particular, there's a lot of new people. So I'd love to hear if this is the first time that we are in container together. And if you have been to many classes before, thank you for coming on back in. Regardless, I'm so grateful that you've chosen to take this time for yourself, really, for yourself, for your own growth and leadership. And also that you've chosen to spend some time with me on a Friday right before Valentine's Day. I know that all of our time is our most precious resource, so I don't take it lightly that you've chosen to be here today. Nicole, first time. Beth, first time. Yay! Welcome. Welcome. Krista, first time. Yes, I'm so happy. First time, but I've followed for a long time. Just the right time now. Yes. Hey, Sabrina, welcome. I'm going to turn my light on here. Hopefully that helps a little bit. It's like minus 45 or something Celsius where I live right now. And yet I'm so excited for this that I am toasty. So hopefully this light doesn't heat things up any extra. Okay. Well, thank you all. Thank you all for being here. Feel free to also share where you are joining in from. There is people literally from all around the world. I have a feeling that those on the other end are going to be catching the replay after. So if you're watching the replay from the other side of the world, hello, let us know that you're here. And I'll love to pop back in and say hello to you even when the replay is happening. Oh, Sally, yay, so happy to see you. Yeah, we had the same cold. It seems to be colder than normal everywhere. Okay, Gwen, I will call you Glenn. Gwen, I'm happy to have you here. All right, so Edge Energetics, that's what we're here for. Edge Energetics is all about how we as facilitators, as coaches, as guides, whatever you identify as, how we can safely push our own edges and also the edges of our clients safely, because I imagine most of us have a similar core value, which is growth, especially if you are, a leading edge person in your field. And so when growth is one of those core values, we can want to really keep expanding, keep growing, keep pushing our edges. And it's so important that we really pay attention to how we do that safely so that we don't end up with burnout, with overwhelm, with adrenal fatigue, with anxiety. And the same thing goes for our clients, that we really understand how to safely guide them into pushing their edges. We create and hold consensual containers that allow them to safely push their edges. And ultimately, we're really looking at creating a space for us to open up to our greatest, most secret, and most honest desires, having room to come up, come out, be named, and be claimed. So I am so thrilled that you are here, because I know that as we really do this work together, and I know chances are that if you are here, that you really care about having an integral, positive ripple effect out in our industry and out in the world as well. And so by doing this work together, we're really setting the stage for that to happen. Oh yay, there are some people from Saskatoon here, from France. Hey Patty, from Vancouver. Patty is extra special. He gets to be the one male identifying person in our space today. Lots of Alberta. Great. So, we're all loving up the cold here. Yes, so this is going to be extra great for you if you do currently find yourself, or if you have found yourself in a space of being triggered, maybe feeling resentful about a relationship that you've had with a coach or with clients, if you feel drained or overwhelmed or anxious. And especially if you find yourself working more than you want to be, or with people or on projects that don't really feel correct for you. So we're going to clean some of that up as we go throughout this series. And again, if you really envision you and your business having this positive ripple effect out in the world, we're going to work on that together. So in this series, there's a lot that really is wanting to come through. I was telling my mentor earlier this week, it's like, instead of it feeling like anchoring like I normally feel, it kind of feels like not a tornado, but like there's like this swirl of energy that just kind of keeps coming in. So I'm going to really trust that what's meant to come through for you today it's going to come through. You're going to receive exactly what you need, whatever it may be. And if there's anything that doesn't need to be shared, that it'll just be kind of taken out. But my intention is that throughout this series, not just today, but today and Monday, we're going to be looking at what is really causing one of the underlying causes of these power drains, these energy leaks, this overwhelm and anxiety that either you or your clients are experiencing. And there are many energy leaks in the Edge Energetics Intensive, we actually really evaluate all of the potential energy leaks and make sure that you're cleaning them all up. But today we're going to look at one in particular, and we're going to explore misaligned dynamics of power. What that really looks like, especially in our industry, and what to do about it. And my favorite part, we are going to look at the thing that really got me pulled into sharing this work with you, and it's exploring the truth of what submissive and dominant roles really are and how that relates to you in your business. We're going to clarify the role that you want to be playing as a coach or facilitator, as well as a client. So everything that we look through today is going to be looked through both lenses, both as a facilitator, as a coach, and as a client. Because when we look at both sides of the coin, both experiences, we can have a better understanding, more empathy, and more of an idea of what's really required to get the most out of the experience from both sides. And how to be the best facilitator, because when we can look at it from the client side, we can gain more information around what feels like a safer, more holistic, transformative container. So I invite you for everything that we look at today and on Monday, that you give yourself permission to look at both sides, okay? So we're going to look at submissive and dominant roles, clarifying the roles that you want to be playing, and how to open the desires, open the door to your deepest desires, the desires that likely haven't felt safe to come out yet. So we are going to play with that and really look at why you and your clients' deepest desires may not have manifested yet. So we're going to look at that from an energetic perspective. And of course, we'll be overarching, really looking at creating more safety, beauty, magic, and Queen of Ease, bringing more ease here, more ease, and of course, results in your business. All the goodness. So I'd love to hear what you are most excited about. What aspect do you feel really most excited about covering today? I know for me it's the subdom dynamics, but there is a lot that we're going to be covering today. Oh, Haley, yes, so glad that you could be here. Hi, Vanessa. Awesome, great. Yeah, it looks like everyone's getting some snow and cold. So yes, what are you most excited about? And as we get ready to dive in and start going deeper here, I invite you to bring out your pen and paper. If if taking notes floats your boat, feel free to do so. If you feel more called to just like really kind of lean back and receive and then take notes afterwards, that's great too. Trust yourself in your guidance here. But most importantly, I invite you to be fully present. So presence is really the key to receptivity. So if you are really desiring to receive from this time together, I invite you to kind of give yourself permission to know that you can go back to whatever else you have to do later on. Turn off any, distractions and bring yourself here and now. Beautiful. Power dynamics, and not always the most obvious one. Subdom for sure. Excited to see how this unfolds. Yes, the dynamics, the ease, the supporting transformation. Never thought of the subdom dynamics. Yeah, for some of you, the concepts of BDSM are going to be totally new. We're going to go more into some of the descriptions and things like that on Monday, aside from the subdom pieces here today. Pushing edges in the safe way. Yes. All right. So before we start going into, curious about aftercare principles, definitely. There's so much that goes into this, and actually that reminds me to share with you that this is essentially just the tip. I literally am writing a whole book on all of this. There's so much that has been coming through. So if you desire to have a deeper experience, pun intended, with this body of work, I'll be sure to share what options are available for you to go deeper into the activation of it, the integration of it, and the full kind of expansive learning of it and application of it as we go throughout this masterclass series. So just know that there is a lot to cover, and I want to make sure that I touch on the pieces that I feel really called to in this series, but also let you know that there is more, and there are dedicated containers, consensual containers, that I require my clients to enter into to really go deeper there. Yes. So for some context as well, I feel like I probably should introduce myself a little bit more, especially since this is the first time many of you have been to one of my classes. So welcome again if you are just popping in. I am Allison Braun, and I have been in the coaching, healing, transformation industry for just over 12 years. And I actually started my work in this world in a positive sex and education focused shop called Positive Passions, which is actually in Saskatoon for many of you who are in this area. So 12 years ago, I started working there. I started kind of undergoing a mentorship. I facilitated workshops. I got to, have strangers open up and share with me the most beautiful things. And I do not take it lightly, the experience that I had there and how it has informed the career that I've built, the business that I've built. So that really led me to building a multi-six-figure business as the bedroom joyologist turned business joyologist, supporting women from all over the world. I believe over 12 countries now. I've worked with women in deepening and opening up, feeling safe to explore their deepest desires with relationship, with their business, with their purpose, full spectrum. And naturally, because I really believe in having a fully expressed business, a space where I can feel fully expressed for myself, naturally, all of these things that I love, like really working with purpose, working with sexual energy and creativity and spirituality, and working with money and energy, because I've also been practicing energy work for over 15 years. All of it really gets to work together. And although I've essentially been teaching the same things for about 12 years, I keep growing because I value growth. So I keep pushing my own edges within safe containers. And that allows me to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper and learning new aspects that impact the things that I care about. So there's a lot of history that goes into the making of this experience. And again, I do not take it lightly, because in this industry and in general, power and responsibility can be the scariest things, because power and responsibility are the two things that have the greatest potential to cause harm. They also have the greatest potential to have a positive impact and great change, but they do have the potential to cause harm. And so I do not take that lightly. I do not take the ideas and the lived experience of power and responsibility lightly. And where things really started to amp up for me in my business is when I realized that I had kind of experienced all of the goals and desires that I had set for myself. And it's like, okay, like what's next? Like what's this new edge that I get to push? And what really started to come through with that is the ideas of having a greater impact, going deeper with clients, and also reaching more people, experiencing more visibility. And in that experience, I realized that I didn't feel safe to do that. I didn't feel safe because my body my body didn't feel safe to hold on to more power, because I believed that more power was more responsibility, and more responsibility opened the doors for the potential to hurt people, or to disappoint people, or to feel disappointment myself. And that was another one of my deepest fears, is disappointing others and feeling disappointed. So naturally, I had to really find safe containers to keep expanding my ability to be visible, and to increase the impact that I was having in a safe way. And although facilitation and creating space for other people to tap into their greatest desires has been something that I've been doing for a very long time, coming into right relationship with these energies of power and responsibility through safe and consensual containers has allowed me to go deeper into my own desires. And by having that experience, it has allowed me to take my clients more deeply into their desires. So again, we're not necessarily going broader in the content. We're going into a deeper level of experience. And with this experience, I've been able to really do my best, certainly not perfect here, but to do my best of really building this business, continuously growing my business and myself with integrity. And that also is a very important kind of key. It can be intense, right? Like we care, you care, which means that you are going to put more effort in than the average person to ensure that you are doing a great job. So again, thank you for being here and continuously doing the work to make safe spaces for your community, for your clients, and for yourself. And with this, I've really learned that we cannot safely push our edges if we don't feel safe. Our clients cannot push their edges if they don't feel safe. And our clients cannot push their edges if we don't feel safe. So safety really becomes the key here. And although there are many different experiences that we can have if we don't feel safe, there's kind of two that typically show up in business as like foundational pieces that there's many layers to underneath. But if we don't feel safe, we tend to stay in a comfort zone. We start going into where we do feel safe, the things that feel natural to us, going into routine. And with this, staying in that comfort mode, it can get a little bit lackluster, especially if you really do care about growth and are leading edge and visionary, right? I know that's where I tend to go. I tend to go into the comfort zone. Or we will keep pushing and pushing and pushing until it's too late. And in that case, what typically ends up happening is harm has been caused. And it takes longer to recover. We have to take more space, more time to recover, because we did kind of just have our head down and keep on going. So with either of these, neither of these is really ideal or optimal. They're not the most sustainable or viable for expansive growth. So when we can access a deeper sense of safety, we can then keep expanding. We're just going to keep nailing that on home. Safety, safety, safety. And a lot of this started to deepen for me in a container with my mentor, Celeste Lemieux, who I have known for 12 years. She's the owner of Positive Passions, and I have been working with her throughout this time. So I know that I feel safe with her. Well, not super recently, but it was through her invitation to start exploring submissive and dominant roles that everything really started to kind of click and open for me and blow my mind. Although I wasn't new to BDSM or the concept of submissive and dominant roles, it was never really something that I felt connected to. No judgment for it whatsoever. It just, my comfortable self just didn't really feel like it was for me. And thanks to her taking the dom role and me having the submissive role, I was able to be in a container that allowed me to feel safe to start breaking through some new edges. You're going to probably feel that energy from me if you have known me for a long time. And applying the context of BDSM, submissive and dominant roles, into business has taken these things that I've taught for so long and made it so much more fun, because when we can apply a different context, it allows us, especially those who are, visionary thinkers, creative thinkers, it allows us to look at things differently. Things that we might see really regularly, we start to look at them differently, think about them differently, and have, therefore, different experiences with it. We can start opening up new pathways for our desires to be met that weren't available before. So my hope is, even if there's some things here that maybe aren't new to you, that by applying this context of BDSM principles, you'll start getting some new pathways happening, some new ideas, some new inspiration, like I have, to make changes, really make changes that are going to allow for revolutionary and safe business growth. So ultimately, you feel safe, your clients feel safe, and when we feel safe, our deepest desires can be revealed. And that's what it's all about. I'm all about making dreams come true, making desires come true. All right, so what we're going to cover here today is going to have this powerful ability to change how you do business and how you do relationships moving forward, even more than you already are, because I know you're already doing an amazing job. And this, again, is just going to allow you to go a little bit deeper. And as we go throughout today, I'm going to make space to answer your questions at the end. But if there's anything that you're hearing that maybe like you don't understand, or there's a question that you have, feel free to pop it in the comments right away. I'll do my best to catch it in the moment. However, if you do have a question, make sure that you remember it, or maybe just copy and paste it somewhere else so that you can put it at the end of the masterclass today, just in case I do miss it. So I just want to make sure that we catch that. Yeah, stuck in that comfort zone. It's so easy to get stuck in that comfort zone. So easy. And when we're stuck in that comfort zone, it's just, there isn't a lot of like that zest for life, the passion that brings new inspiration. So today, I hope that you get some new inspiration, Chelsea. All right. So before we even start talking about BDSM principles, let's talk about why it's important to bring this context into business, the context of BDSM into business. Business, like the rest of the world, is full of triggering situations and power dynamics. And I believe that through our business relationships, we have the ability to, on a micro scale, impact and have a positive ripple effect through the rest of society. Because, I mean, let's be real here. We live in a society that's literally built off of white supremacy and patriarchy. So our whole society, at least in Northern America, is built off of misaligned dynamics of power. And that ripples into business naturally. And so because we live in this world where there are misaligned dynamics of power all over the place, people giving their power to, gurus, people who are, famous, presidents, police, doctors, coaches, we see time and time again that there are people who, when given the opportunity to take power, they do so. and they do so and they misuse it. And so what we really want to be doing here is on a micro scale in the relationships that we do have, if we can start to heal those dynamics of power, it's less likely to, how society works right now is less likely to impact us. Not saying it won't impact us, but we have more of an ability to start changing things from the inside out. So what we want to look at is power dynamics. And power dynamics are really what contribute to these energy leaks. And when we are giving our power to someone else, or if someone else is given power that we didn't consent to receive, it impacts our experience of responsibility. So on one side, there may be a person in power that is taking power and misusing it. But in another vein, there could be a person that is given power. Someone is giving them their power, but they did not consent to it. But because they don't really know what to do with it, they're then carrying the responsibility of this other person's experience. They're taking that power and holding it instead of actually giving it back and having this right relationship with power on both ends. So we want to make sure that there is consent across the board when we're dealing with power. Where there's power, there needs to be consent. And the goal is that everyone has equal power, right? Like that's the mission, is that we are all so fully in our body. We know our boundaries. We know what we need. We know what we don't want. We consent. People listen to us and honor our no's, honor our maybes, honor our yeses. And it's a safe world for us to live in. And we get to start creating that in small relationships that ripple out. Oh, I'm so outside all comfort zones at this point. Well, that might be a good thing. And if you don't feel safe, it might be a really, really, really scary thing. Even if we do feel safe, it can still be really scary. So what I want you to pay attention to here, especially if you're feeling a lot of heaviness, anxiety, or overwhelm in your business, there's a chance that one or two things are happening. One, you are taking on responsibility for other people's experience above and beyond your responsibility that is set by the agreement that you've made. You show up and you complete the agreement, you do your job. But if you're taking on more responsibility for someone else's experience, that's when things can start to feel really heavy. And if you're giving your power to your clients, that you need them, and so there's like this, because you need them, you're letting them do things that are out of alignment instead of having those clear boundaries. This can also apply to team members or a coach or a mentor that you have. It can also apply to giving your power away to past experiences that you've had and letting that influence how you're going forward into new experiences. And this could happen in subtle and not so subtle ways. So I'm curious as you kind of reflect on this, if you are someone who does tend to feel maybe regularly triggered in your business, or a sense of heaviness or anxiety, do you sense that you're taking on more responsibility than you should, than is actually healthy? Or are you giving your power away to other situations, people, or things? So just taking a moment to reflect on that. Feel free to share if you feel called to what comes up for you. I would love to hear. And I know for myself, it's like, this wasn't a new idea or new concept. I've been working with this for well over a decade, probably closer to 2 decades at this point, as far as, the personal growth realm. But I had no idea how much I was letting these dynamics impact most of my life. And when I was able to start seeing things through the lens of BDSM, specifically through submissive and dominant roles, everything really started to change for me on a whole new level. I learned a lot through hard experiences, doing things wrong. That taught me a lot and allowed me to keep improving. But this context alone, without having to experience something hard, has taught me so much. And so my hope is that through receiving these teachings, you don't have to go through a bunch of hard experiences to learn the lessons, and instead you can carry them forward and create really beautiful experiences for yourself and for your clients. I give away too much power to my clients. Yeah, I'm sure you are not alone. I think many people do this, whether it's because their clients are affluent. Maybe, you look up to one of your clients, and so you feel like you have to kind of over deliver and manipulate the experience so that they're happy versus actually doing what's correct for them and for you. Okay, so I'm going to share a little story with you around the submissive and dominant roles, and this will lead into the truth of what these roles really mean. But I'm going to share why I was having so much trouble with, even as the Queen of Ease way back then, I was still having these this subtle energy of heaviness or tension kind of playing in the background. And it actually all started in childhood, because I had a misaligned perception of submissive and dominant roles. I had this idea that the submissive was weak, that they were doing things that they did not want to do, that they did not consent to do, that they were doing things because someone with more power, the Dom, was controlling them. And the dominant was getting their needs and desires met by taking from the other person or making the other person do it. And so it was like one person was winning and one person was losing. And I even saw this from the perspective of home life. I didn't like doing stuff around the house, like cooking and cleaning and things like that. It just wasn't for me. But because I didn't like it, I assumed that nobody liked it. And so I saw someone who stayed at home and took care of those things as being in the submissive role and doing things that they didn't want to do because they had to, because there was a Dom that was making them do things that they didn't want to do. And so because of this misaligned perspective that I had, I actively fought and resisted being in a submissive role. And when there's fight, there's an energy leak. And so because I was fighting, it was one part. Another kind of piece that I feel important to quickly add in here is, not only do we see these things externally, but we see them internally. So we all have these roles within ourselves, a submissive and a Dom, or however you want to look at it, really. We have these two sides of ourselves, this duality. And so even within myself, I was fighting my internal submissive constantly because I didn't want to be weak. I didn't want to be doing things that I didn't want to do. But then the things that were important to get done maybe weren't getting done. And there was this tension within myself. And so what dropped in when my mentor invited me to start exploring submissive and dominant roles is I healed. I don't know if they needed to be healed, but I reconciled these parts of myself with the truth that both of these parts are coming together in unity, working together towards a common vision and goal. They're not fighting each other. They can work together for the same purpose. And this started to really change everything. It's like, I don't know. I hope that it seems as powerful to you as it does to me to have this shift in perspective. And as I go through and share more of the truth of these rules, that it really starts to land for you on a cellular level. So the truth is, the submissive's role here is to receive their desires. A submissive's job is to name and receive their desires with consent, with clear boundaries, with the ability to say yes or no, with the ability to say red light, green light, yellow light at any point in time in the container. It's their job to respect their own boundaries and to be able to name and say their own boundaries in the moment. And it's the dominant's role to get their needs met while meeting the desires of the submissive. And the submissive's role is to meet the needs of the dom. And while we're looking at these things, you can look at it from a coach and client perspective, knowing that the coach doesn't need to be the dom and the client doesn't need to be the sub. It's like the roles are interchangeable, and we can change roles many times in many different relationships. The most important thing is, though, that you're not changing roles within a container unless it was agreed upon in advance. So the dominance role then is to actually meet the submissive's desires, while allowing themselves to get their own needs met, while having the responsibility of holding a safe container. They do the prep work. They prepare the scene, the container, in order to ensure that the submissive is going to get their desires met in a safe way. Their job is to honor the boundaries of the submissive. So can you see here how both people are fully in their power? A good dom is going to vet their sub and ensure that their sub is in a place safe and sane and consensual to honoring their boundaries. Because if a submissive cannot honor their own boundaries and cannot name their like, I need a pause, or I need to slow down, or this is a no, this is a red for me, then it's not safe. It's not safe for the dom, and it's not safe for the submissive. So a good dom will vet their submissive. We'll play with that a little bit on Monday. And so both people are fully in their power. That's an important piece to ensure when you're going into these relationships. When you're going into a relationship with a coach, are you fully in your power? Are they fully in your power? When you're going into a relationship with a client, are you fully in your power? Are they fully in their power? Or do you sense that they're kind of like putting you up in a pedestal or giving you their power? That's not a healthy match. Same thing goes when you're hiring a coach or a mentor. Are you in subtle ways kind of giving them power over you? This is important. We really want to check in with ourselves before entering into agreement what these energy dynamics are beforehand. Do we state this to clients omitting the sub-dom terminology? Yeah, so what this would look like, you certainly don't need to use sub-dom language here. There's many nuances. There's many different roles that we can play. This is just one kind of way of looking at it in a really clear, direct way that provides a safe container and safe boundaries. So when you're working with clients or a team member or whoever, what you're really looking at is creating a clear agreement and establishing your roles. So how that happens typically is by naming expectations. This is where resentment builds. If you've ever had a coach, and I'll be curious to hear this in the comments, please share if you feel open to it. If you've ever had an experience with a mentor or a coach where you felt resentful and disappointed, where it felt like maybe you really liked them and it was a yes, and then something happened and And all of a sudden it was like resentment started to build up. Have you had that experience before? If so, chances are there was expectations that you had that were unnamed. There was expectations that you had that were unnamed, or something that happened where it wasn't communicated clearly and it wasn't agreed upon, especially in advance. And when this happens and there isn't a container for consistent, safe communication, check-in points, that resentment can keep building. And the problem with this is, and I see this happening over and over and over again in the coaching industry, especially, is that resentment builds and you have disappointment as a client. But then all of a sudden what happens is when you're in the coach role, you are scared that that's going to happen to you, that your client is going to have something happen all of a sudden, and then they're going to start resenting you and feel disappointed without you really knowing what was going on. So you're going to try and, again, manipulate and potentially micromanage or take on more responsibility to avoid them being disappointed and resentful. So again, this is why we're looking at things from both angles, from both lenses. And when we can instead come into clear agreement, we first, asking the questions, exploring, naming the desires, naming the needs, and naming the fears and the edges, which we'll explore in a little bit here, then we can create an agreement if and only if we feel like we're both on the same team working in unity towards a common vision. Then we go into agreement, right? With clear parameters of what that looks like and clear consequences if the agreement is broken, if the boundaries are broken, which is a whole other thing that can really really change the clear power that both people have and feel in the relationship. Love this conversation, and yes, see how both are in their power. Such a great realization around if a client isn't in their power or is outsourcing it to you, that is not a healthy coaching relationship. I love that you speak so much about the safety and how boundaries create that for both people. Yeah, if you don't trust that someone else is going to name their boundaries, you are not going to feel safe, because you're going to be walking on eggshells, not sure if you're going to do something right or wrong, and have this person be upset at you because they haven't communicated it and they may not say something until too late. That's not safe for either people. So in order for there to be a really integral, safe relationship without harm, or at least minimize harm, we have to know that both people are clear on their boundaries and are willing to say them. If someone's, often we feel like, oh, I don't want to be bitchy, or I don't want to be a diva, or I don't want to be that person that has these boundaries. It's like, well, then people aren't going to feel safe around you. They're not going to feel safe, which means that they can't keep expanding. There is no revolutionary business growth if you don't feel safe. So boundaries really become this essential thing, which I think most of us know at this point. However, again, it just takes it a little bit deeper into the significance and the importance of getting uncomfortable, pushing our own edges safely in identifying and naming what those boundaries are, and having a container, a community of support where you can receive and be held lovingly in those moments where you're really being pushed up against your edges with these things. Because on a good day, this work is great and we can make it even better by implementing these structures. But on a hard day, setting these boundaries and navigating these pieces can be really, really challenging. And having a good support system can make it less challenging and a little bit more easeful in the process. Doing tasks in my business that are not my zone of genius creates burdens in my bus. Yes. Yeah, our businesses are leaking energy when we're doing things that are not in our zone of genius. So again, are you agreeing to things that you don't actually want to be doing because you feel for some reason that you need to. So that's an important thing to explore, right? Can you give an example of this initial conversation? I can give you a little example. So this is something that we go in much deeper. In the Edge Energetics Intensive, we play through all of this, and it's 5 to 6 hours long. So it's very in-depth. There's a lot that goes into this. But a little taste could be something like knowing and identifying your qualifiers. What do you need to know for you to feel safe accepting a client? What do you need to know about them, where they're at, in order for you to feel safe working with them and supporting them in reaching their desires? What do you need to know? Are they in their power? Where are they at in their business? Are they experiencing activated trauma? Do they have a certain amount of knowledge in a certain area? So it's gonna be different for every single person. You're gonna want to really look at, like, what do you really require as the facilitator in your clients to know that it's going to be a safe relationship. And you're going to ask these questions before you ever enter into an agreement, before you ever even start entering the phase of creating an agreement. Yeah, so from here, you're going to ask those questions. And if they're a yes, great, you can keep moving forward. And if it's a no, then you know that it's not a good fit. And this is where you have to really trust that it's okay to let it go and to maybe refer them to someone else that you know and trust, or to another resource that you believe in. Yeah, this all applies no matter, I mean, especially in the health and wellness industry. All of this it's important no matter what industry you're in, really, for any relationships. But here we want to look at, what information do you need to know to really best support this person, or to identify if you are not the best person to support this person. Do they need a therapist first? Do they need an actual doctor, allopathic doctor versus a naturopathic doctor? What do they really need? If it's you, great, you can keep moving forward. But if not, it's our due diligence to make sure that we're not accepting clients that are not actually in a place to receive the most from being in our container. Right, okay, so I'm just gonna check in and see where I'm at. I have so many notes. Yes, okay. Yeah, so I'm gonna give you a few more examples here. I think this will help let you see how this context can come in again. So let's say a submissive's role is to be honest about their desires, their fears, and their limitations and boundaries, be clear on their yeses, their nos, their maybes, while meeting the needs of the dom. And for someone who is constantly taking care of others, someone who is typically the one giving support, being in a submissive role with a good dom is really liberating and potentially healing. Typically, someone who's always taking care of other people and has a hard time receiving support feels the need to kind of be in control. And when you are in a submissive role, it's about letting go of control and knowing that you're safe and held. So there has to be trust there in order for this to really work. But when you're with a really good dom, with someone who you know is going to really hold you and guide you, they have the information they need, they've prepared the scene properly, it is so liberating and so healing, and it allows you to start feeling safe to receive support in general. So you're not always having to be the one to give, and never actually fill your own cup, because of course that is not a healthy dynamic to be in either. You're modeling for your clients in that case that they have to give in order for them to get what they want. We want to model healthy boundaries. We want to model healthy relationships. So if you're someone who typically has a hard time receiving support, being in a submissive role can be really supportive for you. And on the other end, if you're someone who has a tendency to really like to omit responsibility, who likes to play it pretty comfortable and just kind of go with the flow, really easygoing, being in a dom role can be really helpful because it helps you to have a greater appreciation for responsibility and to practice being fully in your power to really guide someone else potently through a potentially uncomfortable, scenario for them. If you can't guide yourself through discomfort, how are you going to guide your clients through discomfort? So this is why, again, it's really important to practice kind of playing with both roles. I will have to go back and re-listen to this. So many gems that I need to digest further. Yes, yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, there's a lot in here and there's so much more. So for me, I really value duality. I value having both sides really played with. So for me, from a client perspective, I have a coach who plays the dom role. And so with her, I get to really practice being in the submissive role. I get to really practice receiving, leaning back, being taken care of, not having to plan and think of all the things and prep. I get to show up and really receive. And through that, be guided through my edges, right? And I also have a mentor who is in the submissive role. And with her, I prepare. I take the responsibility of preparing what I need to bring to her. I give her my Zoom link, and that's where we both meet. And I know typically, at least in my perspective, I've seen coaches kind of take on the more dom role, but you can play in both. And this is the cool thing, right? We can actually tune into what our truest desire is and where we really want to be, and invite people who benefit from us being in the role that we want to be in, because it allows them to be in the role that they want to be in. But it's really important that you don't have two people who both want to be doms. I want to control things. No, I want to control things. And then it just doesn't flow, right? Like they're kind of butting heads, or two submissives. Oh, what do you want to do? No, what do you want to do? It's like, oh yeah, we can do that. No, we can do that. And it's just kind of floppy. So what we want is that duality. We want one person in the dom role, one person in the submissive role, have those roles clarified before entering into agreement, identify that the roles are not going to be changed. This is also really important, because for someone who's typically in a dominant role, the role of responsibility, the role of planning, the role of kind of guiding things, if they're in a submissive role and they start to feel uncomfortable, it can be natural for them to start to revert back into wanting to go into a dom role. They're uncomfortable, so they want to start controlling again. And this is where it's so important that both people are so anchored into the responsibility here, because if the dom lets the submissive start doming, then the trust is broken and it's out of balance again. So the dom has to really say, like, hey, I see what's happening, and let's pull you back into the submissive role. So this is an important aspect of maintaining safety here. Same thing goes with if the submissive doesn't name their boundary and the dominant crosses that boundary that was never named, it can build resentment in the sub, and it can cause the dom harm, because they caused harm that they didn't intend to. And what happens here is the trust is broken, but it's actually the submissive that was out of integrity here because they didn't honor the boundary. The dom can only do what what they know from the submissive. So there's got to be the clear line of communication here. So for those small details, if some clients are different in terms of their roles, how do you keep it straight? I call you or I'll call me. Or yeah. So this is where you want to be really clear, right? Chances are you don't want to be switching roles all the times with different clients. Typically, as a facilitator, you are going to be in one role, and your clients are going to be one role. There might be the odd one that you feel called to switch for, but not typically. So for me, as a facilitator, although I have a coach that is in a submissive role and a coach that's in a dom role, for me as a facilitator, I'm pretty much always in a dominant role because my clients have a hard time receiving support, a hard time asking for support. So for them, in order to really reach their big desires, they have to learn how to let in more support because they're almost always in a dominant role. They're almost always taking care of other people. So with me, they get to lean back and really learn that they're safe to receive. So for me, I'm in my role as a coach, I'm not switching. It's not to say that you can't, but it definitely could make for more logistical things to keep track of. All right. I think I covered most of the piece around sub and dom roles. One more example of what it could sound like before entering into an agreement is around sharing and asking what patterns are being bumped up against. So, for example, what typically happens when your edges are being pushed or you are uncomfortable. By knowing that before entering into an agreement, you can start as the dom, start to understand what types of scenarios you're going to have to prepare for to be able to guide that person through, or you'll be able to identify that you don't feel safe to guide that person through them. So the person might respond like, oh, I noticed that I think I need to push through, and I don't notice until it's too late often, and I'm not in a good place. So then the dom could assess and say like, oh, you don't trust yourself to have those boundaries in the moment. I don't feel safe leading you. Or they could ask, okay, so would it feel supportive to you if you knew I was going to check in on you really frequently to see if you are red, yellow, or green, if you need to stop, if you need to pause or slow down, or if we're good to go. And with these vetting questions, do you feel confident that you would check in with yourself and answer my check-in honestly? Would you be honest if I asked? And then how that person responds to that question could dictate whether you feel safe to support them and go into agreement or not. So that's another little kind of example of what things can look like. And what I want to go through today in closing, to kind of start wrapping things up, is to really look at what your edges are right now. What your edges are and what your desires are, so that when we go into Monday, we can start playing with that a little bit. So far, we know that you need to know what you want and need. You need to know your edges and your boundaries. You have to trust your intuition as to who you're drawn to enter into a relationship with. You have to know your boundaries and trust yourself that you can speak up and have a container where you'll be listened to. And you have to be able to communicate honestly. And that, again, goes to both sides of the relationship. So let's bring this back to you. What do you want right now when it comes to support? What do you want right now in order to really receive the support that you desire? What type of support do you want? Do you want someone where you're going to feel really safe to start leaning back and soften and to feel safe to start opening up to your desires? Or do you want to have someone that is really going to invite you into your more dominant role, where you get to practice holding a container with responsibility, pushing your edges and pushing their edges. So what do you want right now when it comes to support? We're going to look specifically through the context of business today. So in your business, kind of paying attention to where you're going, where you want to go, and who you are, what type of support is really going to best take you there. And this also applies to what type of container, right? Like, do you need more of a sisterhood or a mastermind? Do you require to just receive information that you can apply in your own time and space? Do you really require someone to be with you in it one-on-one? Identifying all of these things is super important before you go and then enter into a relationship with a coach or a mentor. What do you really need as a facilitator? This is another important piece. What do you really need, even beyond money, as a facilitator, as a coach, as a guide, in order for you to do your best work? This is an invitation to expand what's possible for you to receive as a facilitator, beyond it just being a financial exchange of like, oh, well, my client paid me money, so I have to do all of these things. It's like, for me, I know that I love appreciation and acknowledgement. I'm a projector. Is there any other fellow projectors in here? I mean, we probably all need this, right? But projectors especially. Appreciation and acknowledgement. That's an expectation that I have from my clients now. And I'm not afraid to voice it. It's like, you can give me all the money in the world, but if there isn't an aspect of gratitude and acknowledgement, it's not going to feel good to me. And so I pay attention to, when I'm receiving a client, accepting a client, is this someone who is open to sharing gratitude? If not, maybe it's not a good fit. So as a facilitator, we can receive anything that we want above and beyond money, and including money, whatever amount that feels really supportive and allows us to show up and do our best work possible here. Accountability. So accountability is another piece that I would invite you to even check in on, because sometimes accountability can be a deferral of power. Sometimes we can want accountability when we don't trust ourselves to do the work, and we want to hire someone else to make sure that we do it. But no one can make sure that we do anything except for ourselves. So not saying that there's anything wrong with wanting accountability and check-ins, but I would invite anyone who really values accountability and wants accountability to look a little bit deeper around how you want that to actually look and feel. What does accountability actually mean for you? Is it that when you enter into a container with someone, that you hold yourself accountable because you've invested in that container? Or do you expect that other person to make sure that you show up and do the work? Because no one can do that, right? So just exploring that a little bit deeply. Yeah, babysitter. We don't need a babysitter. I used to play that role. I used to say that I wanted accountability, and I was a great coach for people who wanted accountability, but that was because I would take responsibility for someone else's experience, because then I was more in control. Not supportive. Not supportive. Delegating. Yeah, that's good clarity too. So even recognizing like, oh, I don't actually want to hire a coach. I actually want to hire a team member that's going to actually do the work for me. And then again, clearly being able to express your expectations of that person's role and what they're here to show up to do. What information do they need to do their job properly? What permission do they need to do their job properly? Right? So lastly, what are the edges that you are ready to start pushing safely? What are the edges that you are ready to start safely pushing? Likely the edges that you're starting to be guided to based on the vision that you have of where you want to go. When you have a vision, usually we're guided to like, okay, this is my next growth edge. It's like, oh, okay, next up I need to get more comfortable with visibility, or next up I need to get more comfortable with delegating and receiving support, or next up I need to really push my edges of receptivity. So where you are going is going to dictate what edges are really likely the focus for you to go into next. So what are the edges that you're being guided to start pushing next? And equally as important, what edges are you not ready to push? I think in business, it's so easy for us to be in this push, 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 go, go, go mentality, which does cause harm when we, again, are not acknowledging the boundaries. We're not asking for consent from our own bodies around what actually feels safe and supportive for us to go into. So just as important as looking at what edges we're ready to kind of start pushing a little bit, what edges are we just really, if we're being honest, not ready to go into? And letting that be okay. Letting that be okay. And naming that if someone that you're in relationship with, a partner, a client, a team member, a coach, is starting to push the edges that you're not ready to push, trusting yourself to say no. And knowing that that's okay. So I would love to hear from you in the comments one edge that you're starting to notice come up that you feel ready to start pushing. And this is a little bit of like, okay, we get to like play with the energy of accountability here, right? Like when you name it, you claim it. So a good sub likes to be challenged a little bit. So here you get to be challenged to really name, what those edges are. And if you're having a hard time identifying it, this can be a great journal prompt that you can take into the weekend. Better enrollment process, vetting would be wise for me right now. So new edge is really, clarifying the enrollment process. And I'm hearing you say vetting. So being willing to say no to someone who's interested in working with you if they aren't the correct fit. Even if on paper they seem like the perfect fit, but they don't feel like the perfect fit, are you willing to still say no? Even if they have the money in hand, are you still willing to say no? So what do you require, and are you willing to say no? Push the edges on handing over more responsibility to team members. Yeah, that's such a great one. That's definitely something that we look at in the intensive, the Edge Energetics intensive, is what is going to set us up to receive more support? What information do we need to give to other people in order to receive the support that we want, versus sitting back and saying, I wish that someone could read my mind, and why am I disappointed all the time? No one can ever do what I want them to do. Have you been there? I've been there. So we can look at how to actually address that and set ourselves up for way more success in that section of the intensive. It's a really good one. So today we covered what's really causing the energy leak, power drain, overwhelm, and anxiety for you and potentially your clients. This misaligned dynamic of power and what that looks like and what you can do about it. So really coming into the true definition of a submissive role and the true definition of a dominant role, and letting them unite and work together within yourself and within these relationships. And we also looked at clarifying the role that you might want to play as a coach and as a client. So I'd love to hear what your biggest takeaway was today. If you were watching the replay, you can pop in #replay and tag me so that I can see it. I would love to read. And if you're here live, I will happily celebrate with you. So you can share that while I walk you through what we're going to cover on Monday, and then I'll open the space for Q&A. So on Monday, we're going to go into a little mini intro into BDSM, what it actually stands for, what it means. We're going to look at consent, what consent really looks like and how it's a key to discovering your deeper desires and the deepest desires of your clients. Clarifying your deepest desires and vision for your business. We're going to name it to claim it here. And we're going to have a deeper conversation on desire and how it's actually really vulnerable, especially for women, to live in their desire. So how to create more safety for that to live. And then I'll also cover how to take these teachings deeper into application and integration. All right, so how are you feeling? What are you taking away from today? Let's see here. Oh, great, there's lots of comments coming through. Clear boundaries and setting expectations, vetting my clients and find out if they are the right fit. Be able to say no when needed. Great, good work. Clear boundaries and setting expectations. Releasing the struggle of doing the burden tasks. Ooh, yes, that's a good one. Visibility. Yes, so glad that you enjoyed, Lisa. Naming expectation, huge. Yeah, this is, if you take one thing from this conversation, let it be this. Name your expectations of when there's anyone else involved, and even naming your expectations for yourself. Do you consent to your own expectations of yourself? And do you consent to the expectations that someone else has for you, or do they need to be adjusted? So here we're starting to like open the doors of negotiation and conversation versus like, well, this person expects this, so I just need to show up and deliver it, versus like, oh, you know what would feel way better is if I met that need in this way. Does that feel good to you? So we just get to have way better, honest conversations. And I am someone who avoids conflict like the plague. So this has been a big learning for me to really, learn naming these things and have these conversations. New thoughts today for me. Thank you. Great. The biggest takeaway was the idea of fighting my internal submissive. That really hit home. I'm so glad, Crystal. That was such a mind blower for me. So I'm glad it was for you too, Krista. There are a lot of takeaways, but naming your expectations really hit home. Vetting and playing the role more consistently. So much clarity for me around boundaries and being clear. Awesome, Megan. Yeah, sounds like the naming expectations piece really hit home for everyone, so that's great. Beautiful. So that is a wrap for today aside from Q&A. So I am available to answer any questions that came up for you today. And then we'll wrap it up and you get to have a great Valentine's weekend before we get to come together again on Monday. So any questions? I'm hoping that I described everything as thoroughly as possible, but I know that questions can always kind of pop up in the process. Also celebrating that I went the whole time without drinking water. If you've been to one of my classes before, half the time I'm drinking water. Great, okay. I think there's a little bit of a delay, so I'll hang out for another second here, but I don't see any questions coming in, so I think we're all right. But if you are watching the replay and you do have questions, you are welcome to ask them. I will do my best to pop in and answer them for you. Again, just make sure to pop in #replay with them and tag me. I assume we don't say the term BDSM to clients, we just clarify the roles. Typically, I mean, unless BDSM is something that your clients are going to be familiar with, chances are you're probably not going to dive in with that. I know for myself, I work with a lot of clients in the relationship realm and people who are exploring different edges. I've worked in the sexuality realm for a long time. And so for me, BDSM principles are something that, again, provide that different context for me and for my clients. whether people are familiar with it or not, like most people are kind of curious and ready to dive in. So for me, it feels like a guided thing, but I imagine for most businesses, you're probably not going to want to lead with that. It's more so what you're wanting to do is take the principles, these concepts, and then apply them through the lens of your own values and language and personality so that they really work for you. I meant to touch on the value piece earlier on, so my bad on that. But everything is going to go through your own lens, your own filter, your own values. You don't have to start talking about BDSM. You don't have to like become a dom that starts wearing a latex suit unless you want to. You know, this is really about taking the concepts and the principles and applying them in your business in a way that's authentic to you to create safer containers, right? Is it possible to help guide someone who is submissive into a more dominant role on your team? Is it possible? Absolutely. Again, consent comes first. So then you get to have a conversation, especially if the agreement wasn't made in advance. It sounds like, you know, you're already in a scenario where it's like, oh yeah, I actually want this person to be taking more of a dominant role or a leadership role. But that wasn't what was originally agreed upon. So here you get to then come and present a desire or a request, and then that person can then consent and say, yes, I'm totally on board, or they can say, well, I'm a yes to this and a no to this. So you get to have a discussion there, but it's definitely possible. Thank you so much. This was mind-blowing. I'm going to have to watch again. Yes, great. Love the conversation. You're so welcome, Glenn. Awesome. Beautiful. Thank you so much, everyone, again, for being here, for being present, for asking your questions, for showing up. And I wish you the most yummy, sexy, present, powerful, and integral weekend ever. Bye, and see you on Monday.